My name is Evelyn Carter, and I am 29 years old. I never thought I would cry at a funeral, not just from sadness, but from rage. I was standing at the front row staring at the closed casket that held the only woman who ever made me feel unconditionally loved. My grandma, Rose Carter, had passed away just 3 days earlier. She died quietly in her sleep at a nursing home just outside our small town in Oregon. The room smelled like lilies and furniture polish, and my Aunt Linda was standing a few feet away, sobbing so loudly it felt rehearsed. My cousin Tyler had his hand on her shoulder, offering silent support, while my Uncle Robert looked down uncomfortable in his suit. I watched them all pretend they cared, pretend they hadn't abandoned her. They called it grief. I called it guilt. Grandma Rose used to live in a small but cozy house at the edge of town. It had a creaky porch swing, faded curtains, and always smelled like vanilla and cinnamon. That house had been her world for more than 4 decades. She raised my mom there. She watched me take my first steps there. That house was her independence, her pride, her history. And she gave it up. She sold it to help my Aunt Linda. Aunt Linda, my mom's younger sister, had always been what people called charming but chaotic. 2 failed marriages, financial trouble after financial trouble, and a tendency to lean on family whenever things went south. Last year, she told Grandma she needed help again. She said she was drowning in debt trying to support her 2 sons after her husband disappeared and stopped paying child support. Grandma, being the generous soul she always was, didn't hesitate. She sold her home for $220,000 and moved in with Aunt Linda into her 3-bedroom house. Everyone said it made sense. Aunt Linda had space. Grandma didn't want to live alone anymore. It was practical. But I remember the way Grandma's voice cracked when she told me on the phone. "I'm doing what's best, Evie. Family takes care of each other, right?" I had my doubts. The first few weeks, things seemed fine. Aunt Linda posted happy pictures on Facebook captions like 3 generations under one roof. So grateful. I wanted to believe them. But then Grandma stopped answering my calls. Or when she did, her voice sounded distant, like she was choosing words carefully. "I'm okay, sweetheart, just tired lately. Linda says I shouldn't overdo it." Then came the day I dropped by unannounced. It was late September. I had bought her favorite tea blend and wanted to surprise her. But she wasn't there. Aunt Linda looked startled when she saw me at the door. She pulled me into the kitchen and gave me a quick rundown. "Grandma's been having some confusion, wandering at night. She's not sleeping well. The boys are stressed. We thought maybe she needed more professional help." She said it was a group decision. Like Grandma had a say. She had placed Grandma in a nursing home 2 weeks prior. No warning, no family meeting, just gone. When I visited Grandma at the facility, I expected her to be angry, but she wasn't. She just looked tired. Her hair wasn't brushed the way she liked it. Her sweater had a stain near the collar, but she smiled when she saw me. "Evie, you found me." I held her hand for what felt like hours that day. She didn't complain, didn't blame, but in her eyes I saw the truth. She had been discarded, like an obligation. I started visiting her every week. Sometimes I brought pastries, other times old photo albums. She'd tell me stories from her childhood, from raising my mom and Aunt Linda. Stories of kindness, hardship, resilience. I asked her once why she didn't fight back. She said, "What would I fight for, darling? I just want peace. I gave Linda the house so she could have a future. If this is how I spend the rest of my days, at least I did something for someone." That broke me. It also made me realize sometimes the people who give the most end up with the least. When she passed, it wasn't even Aunt Linda who called me. It was a nurse. She said Grandma had died peacefully in her sleep. No pain, just silence. And now here I was, surrounded by people who smiled at each other, gave speeches about Grandma's strength, her kindness, her generosity. People who had left her in a room with peeling wallpaper and fluorescent lights while they lived comfortably in the house she gave them. I wanted to scream, but I stayed silent because I knew something they didn't. Grandma left me a letter, a sealed envelope she made me promise not to open until after she was gone. And in that letter was the beginning of everything they never saw coming. Because my grandma was not just generous, she was wise. And she didn't leave this world without making sure the truth would rise with her. When I was a little girl, Grandma Rose was the safest place in the world. After my mom passed away when I was 12, I spent every weekend with her. My dad tried his best, but grief swallowed him whole for years. It was Grandma who made sure I had warm lunches, who taught me how to bake banana bread, who waited on the porch every Sunday evening when it was time to go back home. Her small white house sat at the edge of town, with a cracked bird bath in front and an overgrown backyard she swore she'd get to one of these weekends. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. My Aunt Linda and Uncle Robert grew up in that house too. Uncle Robert moved across the country after college, started his own real estate business in Denver, and barely came back except for holidays. Aunt Linda never really left. Even when she did, she always returned after every failed marriage, every financial mess. Grandma always took her back. Growing up, I could see the way Grandma tried to balance her children. She loved them both, but the dynamic was clear. Robert was the responsible one. Linda was the mess. Aunt Linda had charisma. She could make you laugh, cry, and feel guilty all in one breath. She was beautiful, energetic, and always in between jobs. She blamed the world for her setbacks, and Grandma never stopped trying to help her back on her feet. That help came in many forms. Loans never repaid babysitting Linda's kids for weeks, even co-signing on a car loan once. And then came the divorce. It was the third one. Linda's ex-husband disappeared to another state, leaving behind 2 teenage sons and mountains of debt. Suddenly, Linda was back at Grandma's door. I still remember the phone call. Grandma had asked me to stop by and help her clean out her attic. But when I arrived, she wasn't alone. Linda was sitting at the kitchen table crying into a cup of cold coffee. They were talking about selling the house. It makes sense, Linda said, avoiding my eyes. It's too much for Mom to keep up with. The taxes, the repairs. Grandma nodded slowly. Linda needs a chance to rebuild. We'll use the money to pay off her debts, and I'll move in with her. I froze. It didn't make sense to me. That house wasn't just a place. It was part of who Grandma was. I don't want to leave it behind, Grandma admitted, looking at the floor. But maybe I've held on too long. Maybe this is the right thing to do. I didn't argue. I wanted to. I really did. But what could I say that wouldn't sound selfish? Linda needed help, and Grandma was always the one to give it. So the house was sold. $220,000. I helped pack the boxes. I watched the for sale sign come down. I stood on the sidewalk the day the moving truck pulled away. And then slowly everything changed. At first, things looked promising. Linda started posting photos on Facebook of home-cooked dinners and cozy family nights. Grandma smiled politely in the background, wearing sweaters I'd never seen her choose for herself. The captions read, "Family is everything." But when I visited, the cracks showed. Grandma's room was the smallest in the house, barely big enough for a twin bed and a nightstand. Her favorite chair wasn't there. Her knitting basket was shoved into a closet. Still, she smiled. "It's different," she said. "But I'm adjusting. At least I'm with family." Then the call started slowing down. When I rang, Linda would answer and say Mom's napping or she's not feeling well today. I started getting nervous. One Sunday, I dropped by unannounced with a basket of scones and herbal tea. Linda looked startled when she opened the door. "She's not here," she said quickly. "I mean, she is, but... well, actually, she's not." I blinked. "What?" Linda sighed dramatically, stepping aside. "She's been confused lately. She left the stove on last week, walked outside in her pajamas. I couldn't risk the boys getting hurt. So I made a decision. I placed her in a care facility last week. Just like that. No warning, no family meeting, no goodbye." "She's not angry," Linda added, noticing the look on my face. "She understands it's for the best. Honestly, she's better off there. They have nurses, staff. She needs supervision." I didn't say anything. My hands clenched the handle of the basket. Linda forced a smile. "You can go visit her. The place isn't far." I did, that same afternoon. And what I saw broke my heart. Grandma was sitting in a plastic chair near a window looking out at the parking lot. Her clothes didn't fit quite right, and her hair, usually neatly combed, was slightly matted in the back. But when she saw me, her face lit up. "Evie," she said softly, "you found me." She wasn't angry, just tired. We sat in silence for a long time. I gave her the tea and scones. She held them like they were made of gold. Linda didn't even let me bring my blankets, she murmured. I asked for my photos. She said she'd bring them later. I swallowed the lump in my throat. You didn't want this, did you? I asked. She looked away. No, she whispered. But I gave her everything. I gave her the house. What more could I do? We didn't talk about it after that. Instead, I started visiting more often. Tuesdays and Sundays. I brought her magazines, her favorite candy photos I printed out from old family albums. We made a ritual of it. I'd bring her tea. She'd tell me stories. And as she spoke, I could see it. The weight in her eyes. The ache of being unwanted. Still, she smiled. But I never forgot that first day she looked at me and said, "You found me." Because behind those 3 words was a truth no one else wanted to see. Grandma wasn't in that nursing home because of her health. She was there because she had become inconvenient. Because the person she sacrificed everything for didn't want to deal with her anymore. And somehow, even in that heartbreak, she still found grace. She still forgave. But I couldn't. Not yet. Not when I still had a sealed letter sitting in my desk drawer at home. One she made me promise not to open until she was gone. And as the weeks passed, that letter became the weight in my chest. The one thing I wasn't ready to read. Because I knew it held more than just words. It held the truth. And a truth that powerful doesn't stay buried for long. I kept going back. Every week, twice a week, like clockwork. I'd show up at the nursing home with a bag full of small things, books, warm socks, crossword puzzles, ginger candies. Grandma never asked for much. She always met me with a smile, even when she was clearly in pain. Her knees ached from arthritis, and her back stiffened after long nights on that thin mattress. But when I sat next to her and opened a book or put on soft piano music from my phone, she relaxed. It was a rhythm we fell into, like a quiet agreement between us, that life hadn't ended just because it had grown smaller. One Sunday afternoon, we were sitting by the window, watching rain trickle down the glass. She reached over and gently took my hand. "Evie," she said, her voice soft and steady, "I want you to promise me something." I looked up. "Of course, Grandma." She glanced toward the hallway as if to make sure no one was listening. "In the nightstand drawer," she said, "under the old Bible I keep, there's a white envelope with your name on it. You mustn't open it until I'm gone." I hesitated. "What is it?" She squeezed my hand. Something I couldn't say out loud. "But it's for you. Only you." I felt my chest tighten. The room grew heavier, though the rain still tapped softly outside. She looked back out the window and said no more. After that day, I noticed subtle changes in her. She seemed more tired. She coughed a little more. The nurses said it was seasonal, that her vitals were stable, but I knew. I could feel it. Grandma was slipping. One evening a week before Christmas, I brought her a small decorated tree with battery-powered lights. She smiled and clapped her hands like a child. "You always think of everything," she said. I tucked a small angel ornament into her hand. "It reminded me of you." She looked at it for a long time, then whispered, "I miss home." Her voice cracked. I reached over to hug her. "I know, Grandma. Not the house," she added. "I mean, feeling at home, feeling like I belong." That night I cried in my car. Not for me, for her. For everything she gave and everything she lost. In the following weeks, my Aunt Linda never visited. Not once. She sent one bouquet of flowers, cheap daisies that wilted after 3 days. She posted a throwback photo on Facebook with a caption, "Missing my sweet mom today." The comments poured in. "You're such a good daughter. She raised a beautiful family. Heaven gained an angel." I wanted to scream, but Grandma never said a single bad word about Linda. Instead, she spent her last months pouring whatever energy she had left into loving me. In late January, she caught a cold. It started with sniffles, then a cough, then the fever. The nursing home called me when her breathing became labored. "We've taken her to St. Francis Medical," the nurse said. "You may want to come." I drove like a madwoman, heart-pounding, eyes foggy with tears. By the time I got there, she was already sedated. I held her hand through the night. The monitor beeped steadily, a false comfort in the sterile room. I whispered to her, told her stories, read her favorite psalm, and in the quiet of that hospital room just before sunrise, her chest rose one last time and fell. The room was still. I felt something in me break that will never quite heal. Later that morning, the hospital staff asked for contact info for her next of kin. I gave them Linda's number. She didn't answer. Hours later, she texted me. "Thanks for being there. We'll keep the funeral simple." She wouldn't have wanted a fuss. A fuss. This woman raised you, fed you, sold her house for you. But I didn't respond. I went to the nursing home later that day. Her things were already packed into a cardboard box labeled Rose Carter. I found the white envelope just where she said it would be, beneath her Bible, sealed with tape, my name written in blue ink. I held it to my chest, afraid to open it. I waited. I didn't read it that night, or the next. I needed space, time, the right moment. The funeral came 4 days later. It was held at a small chapel near our neighborhood. Linda arrived wearing sunglasses and a black dress that was far too elegant for the occasion. My cousin stood behind her, solemn but distant. Uncle Robert came from Denver, stayed exactly 35 minutes, and left right after the service. I gave a short eulogy. Nothing dramatic, just memories of Grandma teaching me how to bake, of the way she'd hum old songs while watering her plants. Linda didn't speak. She stood by the casket, posing with tears that looked carefully rehearsed. She was one of a kind, she said to an old neighbor, dabbing her eyes. She gave us so much. I gripped my seat. And then just as the guests were leaving, a man in a gray suit entered the chapel. He was tall, calm, and held a black leather briefcase. "Excuse me," he said loud enough for the room to hear. "I'm looking for Evelyn Carter." I stood. He walked toward me and extended a card. "My name is David Reese. I'm an attorney. Ms. Carter, your grandmother was my client." Linda turned sharply. "What do you mean?" He opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "I've been instructed to read her final statement. And the will." Dead silence. Linda's face went pale. My heart started pounding, and that's when I knew the truth Grandma left behind was finally about to speak. The room froze. Guests who were half on their way out turned back around. A few sat down again, uncertain whether this was part of the service. Others stood awkwardly, eyes shifting between me and the man in the gray suit. David Reese looked calm, almost apologetic. "Your grandmother left behind a formal notarized will," he said, glancing toward me. "She requested that it be read publicly after her funeral in the presence of all immediate family members." Aunt Linda let out a scoff. "Is this a joke?" "No, ma'am," he replied evenly. Ms. Rose Carter was of sound mind when she signed the documents. She made her intentions clear. He opened the folder and removed a sheet of paper. "Shall I continue?" I nodded. The lawyer cleared his throat and began to read aloud. "I, Rose Elizabeth Carter, being of sound mind and judgment, hereby declare the following as my final will and testament." A wave of tension rolled through the room. "I have 3 surviving family members. My daughter, Linda Carter, my son, Robert Carter, and my granddaughter, Evelyn Carter." Aunt Linda folded her arms across her chest. My cousin sat upright now, fully engaged. "I have lived a long life, one filled with love and mistakes. I've given everything I had, my time, my energy, my home, in the name of family. Some of those gifts were appreciated. Some were taken for granted." Someone in the back whispered. The lawyer didn't pause. "I sold my home to help my daughter Linda. I gave her everything she asked for in the hope that it would give her a fresh start. But instead, I was placed in a nursing home without warning, without discussion, and without a voice. I do not write these words in anger, only in truth." All eyes turned toward Linda. Her face was turning red, lips pressed tightly. "During my final year, only one person visited me regularly. Only one person listened to me, brought me warmth, comfort, and companionship. That person was my granddaughter, Evelyn." My breath caught in my chest. The lawyer continued. "I hereby bequeath all remaining assets under my name, including the remaining balance of my retirement account investment portfolio and personal savings to Evelyn Carter, with no conditions or restrictions." Linda shot to her feet. "This is ridiculous," she said, voice rising. She was not in her right mind. She was confused, delusional. She didn't even know what she was signing. David Reese calmly held up another paper. Here is a signed medical evaluation from Dr. Karen Moss, a geriatric physician who visited Ms. Carter monthly. It states she was cognitively sound as recently as 2 months before her death. She was aware of her decisions, and her will was updated and notarized with full legal oversight. Linda's mouth opened, then closed. The room was deathly silent. Additionally, the lawyer said, reaching into his briefcase again, Ms. Carter left behind a video recording to accompany this will. Would you like me to play it? I didn't know what to say. I simply nodded. He pulled out a small tablet, tapped the screen, and turned it toward the room. And then, there she was. Grandma, sitting in her nursing home chair, a knitted shawl around her shoulders, her hair brushed neatly behind her ears. She looked straight into the camera. If you're watching this, then I've passed on, she said gently, and I hope my passing was peaceful. She paused, smiled faintly. I've always believed in giving more than I had. I gave my daughter a house hoping it would give her security. I gave my time, my love, my energy. But when I needed her, I was left behind. A tear rolled down my cheek. This is not revenge. I'm not angry, just disappointed. She looked down, then back up. To my granddaughter, Evelyn, thank you. Thank you for remembering me when it was easier to forget. You gave me more comfort in a 10-minute visit than I received from others in an entire year. I felt the weight of every memory, the scones, the tea, her hand in mine. I leave everything to you, Evelyn, she said. Not because of blood, but because of love. I know you'll use it wisely. I trust you. And if one day you ever wonder whether you did enough, know that you did. More than enough. The video ended. Silence. Not a sound in the room. My heart was breaking, but not in the way it had at the funeral. It wasn't just grief. It was something deeper. It was vindication wrapped in sorrow. Linda stood frozen. Her eyes didn't meet mine. My cousin stared at the floor. Uncle Robert approached me quietly. She was proud of you, he said simply. I should have visited more. Then he left. Most people filtered out of the chapel soon after. Linda never spoke to me again. Not that day. Not since. But it wasn't over. Later that evening when I got home, I remembered the envelope. The one Grandma had told me to take from her drawer. I sat at my kitchen table, hands trembling, and opened it. Inside was a letter written in her handwriting. Familiar, slightly shaky, but steady enough to read. Dear Evie, if you're reading this, then I've gone. I hope I made things a little easier with the video and the will. I needed you to know that I never stopped being your grandma, not even in those last months when my body hurt and my mind wandered. I know what Linda did. I know she pressured me into signing away things I didn't want to give. I let her not because I was weak, but because I was tired. I wanted peace more than justice. But I never wanted you to carry that silence. So I kept something aside, something small but honest. Enclosed, you'll find copies of the papers she had me sign, transferring the house money, the care authorization, everything. I want you to see what happened and decide for yourself what to do. I don't want bitterness. I want you to live with clarity. Use what I left you however you see fit. Just promise me you'll keep your heart open. All my love, always. Grandma tucked in the envelope were copies of every document. And just like that, the second layer of truth fell into place. Grandma had known everything. She'd known she was being used. She'd known she was being cast aside, but she chose not to fight. Instead, she gave me the truth and let me be the one to decide what came next. In the days following the funeral, I couldn't sleep. I kept Grandma's letter beside me on the nightstand. I reread it every night, sometimes twice, sometimes in tears. I wasn't just mourning her death. I was mourning the way she had been treated, the way she had been erased from her own life by the very people she gave it all to. And now I held every piece of proof. The letter, the copies of the documents she was manipulated into signing, her voice on video, her words careful and measured, saying everything without bitterness, but with the full weight of disappointment. And I didn't know what to do with any of it. I wasn't like Grandma. She always wanted peace. I wanted justice. I wanted to do something that would make it right, but I didn't know how. A week later, I returned to the nursing home one last time to pick up a few final belongings they had found after cleaning out her room. An extra pair of slippers, a jar of loose change, her old photo frame with a picture of her and my mom. As I was leaving one of the nurses, an older woman with kind eyes stopped me in the hallway. "Evelyn," she asked. I turned. She smiled hesitantly. "I'm Beatrice. I took care of your grandmother most evenings." I nodded, holding back the wave of emotion. "Thank you." I know she appreciated that. "She talked about you all the time," Beatrice said. "She adored you. And she left something with me, actually. Told me not to give it to anyone but you." I blinked. "What is it?" Beatrice disappeared into the small office, then returned with a manila envelope. Inside was a USB drive. "She said you'd know when to watch it," Beatrice said. "She recorded it on my phone. I helped her, actually. She wanted to look nice." My hands shook as I accepted it. That night, I sat on my couch with the lights off, just the laptop in front of me and the soft hum of the fridge in the background. When I opened the file, Grandma appeared on screen again. But this time her expression was different. Not composed like in the Will video. This time she looked vulnerable, tired, but also resolved. "Evie," she said, "if you're watching this, then you know the truth." She took a deep breath. "I never wanted you to be angry. I know you. You feel deeply. And when people you love are hurt, you can't let it go. You're like your mother in that way." I smiled through the tears. I didn't tell anyone else this, not even the lawyer, because I didn't want the family to fight over it. "But I need you to know there's more." She shifted in her chair. "I've been saving since I was 32. Small amounts. From the diner job, from Social Security, from when I sold crafts online, remember that? And I made some investments back in the 90s. Nothing big, just things I held on to." My stomach dropped. She looked directly into the camera. "There's a portfolio under my name. It's managed by a small financial firm, Sterling and Harper, downtown Portland. I didn't tell Linda or Robert. I didn't even tell your mom. I kept it quiet because I didn't want it to become a prize." I paused the video and stared at the screen. Was she saying what I thought she was saying? I hit play again. "It's not in the will because it wasn't in the estate at the time of signing. But it's real, and it's for you. Every penny." I covered my mouth. "I never wanted to reward cruelty. I wanted to reward love. You showed up for me even when it was hard, even when no one else did. And I wanted to show up for you too, even if I wasn't around to see it." She smiled, soft and sad. "Use it wisely. Use it to build something that outlives both of us." The video ended. I sat frozen for a long time. The next morning, I called Sterling and Harper. After a long conversation and the verification of my identity, they confirmed it. Grandma had a private portfolio in her name. Its current value, $1.6 million cash, bonds, long-term stock holdings, conservative, steady, quiet wealth. I couldn't believe it. The same woman who had clipped coupons her whole life, who wore sweaters until the sleeves unraveled, who gave away her house because someone asked for help, had quietly built a fortune no one knew about. And she left it all to me, not because I earned it, but because I stayed, because I didn't walk away when she had nothing left to offer. For the next few weeks, I barely spoke to anyone. Linda called once, left a voicemail. "You think you can just take everything? She was my mother." I never called back. Instead, I started dreaming. Grandma hadn't asked me to punish anyone. She asked me to build. So I started looking. I found an old brick building on the edge of town. It had been a daycare years ago, but now it sat empty, the windows dusty and the paint peeling. I walked through it with a notebook in hand, trying to picture what it could become. A warm place, a safe place, a place for people like Grandma, people who had given everything and asked for nothing in return. I bought the building, hired a small local team to renovate, tore out the cracked linoleum, painted the walls soft pastel colors, rebuilt the garden in the back. I called it Rose Haven. A residential home, not a facility for elderly people who had been forgotten by their families. We built private rooms, a communal dining space with homemade meals, a porch with rocking chairs, a music room, a small library, and I made sure every room had a window facing the trees. I hired nurses who spoke gently, caregivers who called the residents by name, not numbers, and I told every staff member what Grandma told me in her final letter. We don't need to fix the whole world, just start with one person and treat them the way they deserve. Word got out slowly at first, then faster. People in town began donating books, furniture, some offered to volunteer. One day, a local reporter heard the story and came to interview me. She asked what inspired me. I held up a photo of Grandma taken 2 years before she passed. She did, I said. This place is hers. I'm just the one holding the keys. The article ran in the Sunday paper, then on local TV, then a regional news site picked it up. The story of a woman who built a quiet legacy in secret, and the granddaughter who turned that legacy into a home. One afternoon, I was out front watering the garden when a boy no older than 10 walked up with his grandfather. The man looked worn, tired, unsure. The boy turned to me. "Is this the place where old people get to feel happy?" I knelt down. "Yes," I said. "It is. Can my grandpa come here?" I looked up at the man. He looked at me like he hadn't heard kind words in a long time. "Of course," I said. "He's family now." That evening, I sat alone in my office. I opened the drawer where I kept Grandma's letter. I read it again. Every word felt like a whisper in my ear. And for the first time since she passed, I didn't cry. I smiled. Because I knew she was still here. Not in body, but in everything that mattered. She had given me more than money. She gave me purpose. And I was going to spend the rest of my life giving it to others. Months passed. Seasons changed. The flowers bloomed in the Rosehaven garden, and the rocking chairs on the front porch rarely sat empty. Some of our first residents painted watercolors in the art room. Others played chess or swapped stories over tea and cookies. There was music on Friday nights, laughter during Sunday lunches, and quiet companionship on rainy afternoons. I watched them slowly come back to life, not because of expensive therapy or flashy amenities, but because someone finally treated them like people. It was everything Grandma never had in her final year. And now through Rosehaven, it was everything I could give to others. I didn't talk about the inheritance anymore, or the video, or the will. That story had run its course. Now I focused on what came after. Still, from time to time, the media would reach out. A podcast wanted to feature the granddaughter who inherited millions and built a home instead of buying a mansion. A speaking conference invited me to talk about ethical inheritance and elder care. I declined most of them. I wasn't interested in attention. But one day I accepted an invitation to speak at a small community college near Portland. Not for the headlines, but because I wanted to speak to young people. The ones who might have a grandparent sitting alone right now. I stood in a modest auditorium in front of maybe 70 students. Most were in their 20s, tired, distracted, clutching coffees and phones. I told them my story. Not the dramatic version, just the truth. That love sometimes looks like warm socks on a cold day. That visiting someone in a forgotten room could mean more than writing them a check. That family isn't about blood. It's about presence. At the end, one girl stood up. She had tears in her eyes. "My grandma's in assisted living. I haven't seen her in months." I didn't know it mattered this much. I smiled. It always matters, even if they don't say it, especially then. After that, I received dozens of letters. Not just from students, but from strangers around the country. Some shared regret. Others shared hope. A few asked how they could help. So we started a scholarship fund, the Rose Carter Fellowship. It offers financial aid to students pursuing geriatric medicine, social work, or nonprofit management, with a focus on elder care. Grandma would have loved that. She believed in education, believed in lifting others up, and now, through her quiet fortune, she was helping others rise just like she helped me. Linda never reached out again. Robert sent a card on the first anniversary of Grandma's passing. It was short, but thoughtful. I didn't need more than that. I had made peace with them both. Not because they deserved it, but because holding on to resentment would have poisoned everything I was trying to build. Forgiveness wasn't for them. It was for me, for Grandma, for the people who walked through the doors of Rosehaven looking for comfort. I still visit her grave. Not often, just when I need to breathe. There's a small bench beside it. Sometimes I sit there with a cup of tea and read a passage from one of her favorite books. One autumn afternoon, I brought a group of Rosehaven residents to the cemetery for a memory walk. We lit small candles and placed them beside the headstones of their loved ones. One of the women, 87 years old, held my hand and whispered, "No one's ever remembered him this way before." It broke my heart and healed it all at once. We don't need to change the world in grand gestures. We just need to show up, be present, be kind. I think about Grandma every day, not in grief anymore, but in gratitude. She left me a fortune, but more than that, she left me a compass, a way to live, a way to matter, and I carry it with me. Every time I walk down the hallway of Rosehaven and hear the soft shuffle of slippers, every time someone calls me dear or sweetheart the way she used to, every time someone feels like they've finally come home, that's her, that's love, that's legacy. If you've stayed with me through this story, I want you to remember one thing. Don't wait. Don't wait to call them, to visit them, to show up. Don't wait until it's too late to be the person who cared. Because in the end, no one remembers the money. They remember the moments. They remember who was there when no one else was. Be that person. For someone. For anyone. Just like she was for me. And maybe, just maybe, you'll help them feel home again. Just like I did for Grandma. Some nights when the lights dim at Rosehaven and the halls fall quiet, I sit by the window in my office looking out at the garden Grandma never got to see. We planted rose bushes there in her honor. Not because her name was Rose, but because she was one. Strong, delicate, resilient. A bloom that kept returning no matter how many storms she weathered. I keep her old sweater draped over the back of my chair. It still smells faintly of lavender and sugar cookies. Sometimes I wrap it around my shoulders and just listen to the silence. I think about all the people who never got to say goodbye properly. All the elderly left behind by families too busy, too broken, or too distracted. And I think about what it meant for Grandma to sit in a quiet nursing home day after day, still managing to smile, still telling stories, still finding a way to give. She never gave up on love, even when others gave up on her. That's the part that stays with me. She could have been bitter, could have rewritten her will with vengeance, could have cursed the people who failed her. But she didn't. She told the truth. And then she passed the torch to me. There are moments I still doubt myself. Moments I wonder if I'm doing this right, if I'm strong enough, if she would approve of the choices I've made. But then something small happens. A resident laughs for the first time in months. A grandchild calls someone, donates a hand-knit blanket. And I feel her again. Not just in memory, but in motion. In the ripple effects of one woman's quiet courage. I never became rich in the way most people dream of. I don't live in a mansion. I don't drive a luxury car. But I am wealthy in a way money can't define. Because I know what it means to matter, to be remembered, to make someone feel seen. And I owe that entirely to her. To the woman who gave up everything she had only to be left in a place no one ever wants to end up. To the woman who still chose love. To the woman who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. If you've made it to this point in my story, thank you. Thank you for listening, for feeling, for remembering. And I truly hope you take something with you. Call your grandma, visit your dad, forgive your mom. Check on the neighbor next door who always eats alone. Because legacy isn't about money or inheritance or last names. It's about the people we show up for and the lives we touch when no one else is watching. That's what Grandma Rose left behind, not just in her will, but in me, in this place, in every smile that fills these halls, and now maybe in you. Thank you, Grandma. You didn't just leave me a house, you left me a reason. And I promise I will carry it forward, always.